Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, Jimmy G got the start on Saturday versus the Rams and looked good. But all the conversation coming out of the game is still about the fourth-round pick, quarterback Aidan O'Connell. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for August 21st, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. Of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. We definitely appreciate you. The show has grown in a major way. That's because of you, and that's because of my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day making sure that we're up on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good. He takes a lot of pride in the work that he does, and we definitely appreciate that. You can check out Ari. You want to shout him out, you can check him out on Twitter, at Ari Produces. If you want to hit me up on Twitter as well, you can, at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. You want to get something in on the show, call or a text. We'll do that in segment number 3. And I'll tell you, I can tell we're getting closer and closer to the end of the preseason. I can tell it's getting closer to cut down day. I can tell it's getting closer to the beginning of the regular season, as there's been a lot of calls, a lot of texts, getting a lot of feedback on Twitter, a lot of interest right now in the silver and black, where there was a point in this, the offseason where I was like, I don't know how interested I am this year. Well, it's our nature. We can't help ourselves. We definitely get fired up by what we're seeing in just football activities and knowing that the preseason is almost over, and we'll be talking about week 1 versus the Denver Broncos sooner rather than later is something to get excited about. So your calls and texts, again, we'll get as many in as possible. Will come up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we got to talk about the guy that everybody's talking about. That's Aidan O'Connell. He went out on Saturday and had another good performance. Didn't play as much as he did in game number 1 against the 49ers, but still did some really good things. So we'll talk all things Aidan O'Connell coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, I'd like to hit you with the news and notes of the day. And really, for us, it's just going to be a recap of the game, what we saw on Saturday, what stood out, who stood out. That's all coming up here in segment number 1. Before I get to any of that, though, I want you to know that today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on in the show, but let's go ahead and jump right into it. News and notes. The Raiders beat the Rams 34-17, 2-0 in the preseason, and now 6-0 in the preseason under head coach Josh McDaniels, as long as he's been the coach of the Silver and Black. And I know that wins and losses don't matter in the preseason, but, you develop a habit of winning. Maybe that'll turn into a habit of winning in the regular season. That's all you can ever hope for, but I'll tell you, the Raiders, I thought, looked really good on Saturday, right? There was a few moments here and there where I thought, okay, that could have been better. The execution could have been better. But all in all, I thought they did a really good job, and I thought they've done a really good job through 2 games. Jimmy Garoppolo and the starters, they did start the game, which is something that we kind of heard was a possibility throughout the course of the week. It was a possibility. Then on Saturday, before the actual pregame show, Vinny Bonsignore tweeted out an article saying that Jimmy G was going to get the start. So that became the whole conversation, really, for the pregame show, was what to expect from Jimmy G and the starters. Well, all he did is go out and go 4 for 4 on the first drive, 39 yards, and found a way to punch the ball into the end zone. Brandon Bolden, he ran it into the end zone. So one drive for Jimmy G and the starters, and very well done, resulted in a touchdown. And, the funny thing is, I was talking on the pregame show with Jason Horowitz. He was one of the guests I had, and I asked him that straight up. What do you want to see from Jimmy G? What do you think head coach Josh McDaniels wants to see from Jimmy G? And he said straight up, they want to see the same thing that the Giants saw the night before on Friday night, when they had their starters out there and they went down the field for one drive and scored a touchdown. He said that would be ideal. Let them get in the game, go down the field, score a touchdown, and get the guys out and say, okay, good, job well done. And that's exactly what Jimmy G and the starters did. And now guys like Colton Miller, he wasn't playing. I guess he's got a little bit of a tweak here or there, a little bit banged up, but not really anything that serious, something that he'll be fine for the beginning of the regular season. But Jermaine Illuminor started at the left tackle spot, Thayer Munford at the right tackle. And I'll tell you, I was a little concerned because Jimmy G was getting the start. And, of course, you have to keep Jimmy G upright. But I thought the offensive line did a really good job. I thought that Zamir White was running downhill. He was running strong, a lot stronger than he did in game one with the 49ers. And then Brandon Bolden, he finished off that first drive with the touchdown. But all in all, for the starters, job well done. right? The starting defense didn't look dominant like it did the week before against the 49ers, or actually 6 days before, as they did against the 49ers. But the first couple possessions for the Rams resulted in punts. So that's also job well done. Like I said, they didn't get to the quarterback as early as they did against Trey Lance of the 49ers, but they still found a way to get off the field. So that's always going to be a positive. I thought Robert Spillane stepped up and made a nice play here and there. And you could just tell that this team is starting to come together. Again, this is just a preseason, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I thought that everything looked pretty good. Brian Hoyer got into the game, and he didn't look very good, right? And I was actually surprised he played as much as he did. And I just kind of kept waiting for Aidan O'Connell to come out there. And that's really a credit to, one, Aidan O'Connell, and then two, just kind of knowing who Brian Hoyer is. I mean, he just didn't look good. He threw a pick six. It was an ill-advised pass. It was something that he should have never thrown. He should have seen the linebacker sitting there waiting. He tried to hit Michael Mayer, and he didn't. It was good to see Michael Mayer out there, as he had been dealing with some things, but he got back to practice last week, and seeing him out there just in general, I think that was definitely a positive. But Brian Hoyer just kind of did what Brian Hoyer does, and I've said it multiple times. If he has to go into the game and just play a little bit, a few snaps here and there, I think that'll be okay. But if you think that Brian Hoyer is going to be a guy that's going to hold it down for for a few games or a long period of time, that's not going to be a good thing, right? So, and matter of fact, we'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2, because after the performances that we've seen from Aidan O'Connell in the first 2 preseason games, there might not be Brian Hoyer at the number 2 quarterback position, but we'll save that conversation for segment number 2. Outside of that, I thought that guys did well throughout the course of the game defensively. I thought they were still flying around looking for the ball. Once again, I think Amik Robertson is in a battle in that cornerback room. He had a couple opportunities to make plays. They just came up a little short. One, he should have had a pick six, and he didn't. I think he was thinking about getting to the end zone and how he was going to celebrate, and he forgot one thing. He forgot to bring in the ball. That was, the one, I guess, negative. But, Isaiah Palomau flying around and getting a pick six, and, Stetson Bennett just threw it right to him. It wasn't like it was a difficult play, but he had to make the play. And that was what stood out to me is, the ball was thrown right to him. Stetson Bennett just sailed it right over his wide receiver's head. And, Isaiah was standing right there to make the play, but he had to make the play. And we've seen other times where Raider defenders will just put the ball on the ground, even if it's an easy play. So I got to give him credit for doing that. Drake Thomas, Amari Burney, Curtis Bolton, those guys, I know they came in later in the game, but those guys really stood out to me defensively. I mean, Drake Thomas was flying around. He led the team in tackles with 12. Amari Burney looked like he was playing really well, building off of what he did week 1 against the 49ers. And even Curtis Bolton, who is a special team ace, that guy was looking like he had something to say about the defensive side of things as well. He was flying around. So Curtis Bolton really caught my attention. Anytime I see him, I expect for him to be, like I said, that special teams ace. But to be able to see what he was able to do out there, I thought that was really good. The funny thing, and we'll talk more about Aidan O'Connell coming up in segment number 2, but when he got into the game, his first play was a deep shot to Trey Tucker that should have been a home run touchdown. I mean, Trey Tucker was behind the defender. Aidan O'Connell was supposed to lay it out there and Tucker take it to the house. And I don't know if it was because it was first pass. I don't know if it was because he was so wide open that he was just like, oh, man, he just rushed the throw, but he sailed the ball out of bounds. That was the one bad pass that Aidan O'Connell had on Saturday, was the very first one. And then he settled in and he looked great. And again, we'll talk a lot more about him coming up in segment number 2. But all in all, I thought job well done by the Silver and Black for the second preseason game. Now they get ready for the third preseason game, which will be in Arlington, taking on the Dallas Cowboys next Saturday. And then it gets tough, man. The 29th is when they've got to get the roster cut down to 53 men from where it's at right now, which is 90. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions. You're talking about the offensive line room, and I still think that the offensive line room, after the loss of Brandon Parker, they could probably still afford to bring in another guy just to try him out, maybe even in this game coming up against Dallas, just to make sure they have all the right guys there. But they have enough bodies where that's going to be, some tough decisions on who's going to make the cut, who's not. But the wide receivers, that room is really deep. The cornerbacks, that room is really deep. That's why I said Amik Robertson's going to, again, have his work cut out for him to stay on the roster. And I feel like I say that every year about Amik, and he finds a way to stick around. But it just looks like it's a lot more competitive this year than it even was last year. So, this game coming up this week against Dallas and this week of practice and preparation might be something that Amik really needs. And he might have to do what he did last year against the Patriots in preseason game number 4, where he really went out there and balled out. So this is going to be an interesting week. It really will. And like I said, I'm glad I don't have to worry about making the roster cuts, because this is a very talented team, really. I was about to say room, but I think it's a talented team where there's going to be a lot of tough decisions made on who makes it and who doesn't, who's a practice squad person and who's not. But one guy I know is going to make the roster, that's Aidan O'Connell. Aidan O'Connell did his thing on Saturday, and we're going to talk about not only the performance that he had on Saturday, but also just what he can bring to the table moving forward as potentially, and I say potentially with the big capital P, potentially the Raiders' backup quarterback. We'll do that in segment number 2 after I talk to you about the title sponsor of the show, which, as I mentioned, is BetterHelp. And sometimes, Raider Nation, life comes at you fast. Sometimes you're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. And sometimes it's decisions around your career, relationship, or it could be anything else. Or it could be something that's really life-altering, right? I mean, it could be many highs or many lows, but sometimes you just need someone to talk to. Therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, if you're thinking that it could be something that can help you out with whatever kind of decision or whatever kind of life-altering things are going on or potentially life-altering things are going on, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map. Again, with BetterHelp, all you got to do is visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. HELP.com/lockedon. One more time, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk all things Aidan O'Connell as once again, once the game got wrapped up with the Rams on Saturday, most of the conversation was about Aidan O'Connell and what he was able to do in the action that he got. And look, he was into the game. He did, I thought, a really good job once he got in. I mentioned in segment number 1 the one pass that he had that went sailing out of bounds. But outside of that, man, he looked like, well, he basically picked up where he left off against the 49ers. He was 11 for 18, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And the 2 touchdown passes were really nice. You know, one, he threw to Cam Sims. He just kind of threw a little fade route, gave Sims an opportunity at 6'5" to go up and make a play. And originally it was called out of bounds. And then after they reviewed it, it's like, nope, that's a touchdown. And then the one to Christian Wilkerson in the back of the end zone allowed him to have that toe tap swag, right? Catch the ball at the back of the end zone, get his feet down, touchdown. Those were precision passes. And it's funny because, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Right now, Aidan O'Connell could do no wrong, right? Raider Nation believes that Aidan O'Connell could be the guy. Hell, there's people that think Aidan O'Connell could be the guy right now as far as a starter. I'm not going there, but I'll tell you right now, he's making a case for that number 2 spot. I mean, what we saw in the game against the Rams with Brian Hoyer was not anything to write home about, right? I mean, he didn't look very good. He didn't look very comfortable, and he just looked very, I guess, Brian Hoyer-like. I think Brian Hoyer is important for the roster because I do think he helps coach up Aidan O'Connell. But as far as him actually getting out on the field, I don't really need to see too much from Brian Hoyer. I really didn't need to see anything from him on Saturday, but I guess it's good that he got out there just to kind of see where he's at. And I think it made everyone realize it might have helped Aidan O'Connell secure that backup job. Because when you saw what Brian Hoyer was able to do, you probably thought, yeah, thanks, but no thanks if you're the Raiders coaching staff. So, again, a coach on the field. He's a guy that where Jimmy G doesn't have to try to coach up Aidan O'Connell. Brian Hoyer could take that role. But as far as him getting out on the field playing, I don't need to see any of that. And last week, Brian Baldinger broke down Aidan O'Connell's first performance against the 49ers. Well, he was so fired up about his second performance against the Rams, he broke it down immediately the very next day. So here's Brian Baldinger, a little, Baldy's breakdowns on Aidan O'Connell after game number 2 versus the Rams.
Let's watch Aidan O'Connell, AOC. Let's watch Aidan OC right here. Aidan right here to Keelan Cole, right in the middle of the field, beats the safety. But this is what's impressive about it. His tight end's going to get beat off the edge, and he's going to have to take one for the team right here. Keep his eyes up, step into the throw, and take that right to the solar plexus. Like, bounce right back, perfect throw. And then this throw on the outside to Trey Tucker. I mean, is this Daryl LaMonica to Fred Biletnikoff? Is this the Mad Bomber right here, just letting it fly in stride to Tucker? Because these two seem to have a real connection. Here's Tucker at the bottom. This is a 25-yard comeback. This is old-style Raider football. Watch when he releases this ball here. Ball's out. It's already left his hand. Watch this. Comes back and the ball's sitting right there. I mean, that's great timing. And this one, bad snap, pick it up, and then deliver the strike right in the middle of the field. between 3 Rams right there. And then if you got to finish drives, like this one here to Christian Wilkinson, right? Toe, tap, drag, beautiful. And how about this floater to Cam Sims? Like, does it get any better than this floater right here? I mean, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, no passes close to being turned over. He looks good.
So there goes Baldy right there talking about Aidan O'Connell and what stood out from his performance. And again, I just love the film breakdown and the film work. And if you have an opportunity to go check it out and actually check out the video, definitely look at it. And all the points that he made about him standing in the pocket and even knowing that he was going to have to take a hit on one of those pass attempts that he had, he did. He stood in there tall and delivered the ball down the field. And, there was even a time where he had to scramble for a first down, and that was good. He surveyed the whole field. He went through his progressions. Nothing was there. It was all covered up pretty well. Wanted to pick up a first down. He saw the opening. Boom, he took it. That's all you really got to do. You got to be able to do that. Again, I never ask you to have to be Lamar Jackson. I never say the guy has to be Jalen Hurts or something like that where he's going to run around the yard and be that weapon. But he's got to be willing to pick up the first down when it's there. When there's green grass there, you've got to be willing to go get it. And Aidan O'Connell showed that he did that. His stats through 2 preseason games, 26 for 36, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 125.2 rating. So, right, I mean, just looking at that, and look, I know I don't want to put too much stock into preseason because it's just that. It's preseason. But I know, and at least I feel for me personally, I know when someone is onto something or when somebody is putting something together, when they leave you that feeling of wanting more, right? And if you had told me a month ago that, hey, man, by the time the first preseason game was over, what you saw from Aidan O'Connell, you're going to want to see some more. You're going to wait. You're going to say, hey, I can't wait to see him get back on the grass. Well, that's how I felt after the first game with the 49ers. Say, okay, I want to see some more of Aidan O'Connell. And then after Saturday night, I wanted to see more of Aidan O'Connell. I was actually upset that he wasn't in a little bit earlier. I was like, all right, I've seen enough Brian Hoyer, right? It was so funny. Mama Q texted me and was like, all right, get Hoyer out of there. Let's go ahead and put O'Connell in there. Like she was, I'm like, sure, like many Raider Nation, ready to move on from Brian Hoyer as well and see what Aidan O'Connell had. And again, he just did not disappoint as all. Looks like he's got a nice little relationship with Trey Tucker. Looks like he's got a nice relationship with Keelan Cole, right? And of course he's going to, because these are guys that are not going to be running with the ones, and so he's getting that kind of run with them in practice. But I mean, a guy that's able to take a deep shot, and it's not like he's going to be taking deep shots all the time, or the Raiders are going to be taking deep shots all the time, but with that speed of Trey Tucker and even the speed of a guy like Philip Dorsett, as long as he makes the 53-man roster, DeAndre Carter, guys like that, you got to be able to keep defenses honest and take some shots. And Aidan O'Connell showed that he could really do that. And so as far as I'm concerned, and I guess this will be a very important week against the Cowboys, not just the game, but also just the week of preparation, I feel like Aidan O'Connell should be the leader in the clubhouse for the number 2 quarterback spot. And I don't think that it's even close. I really don't. And what I mean by that, why I say I feel comfortable with that, if Jimmy G were to go down for some period of time, I don't think I'd have any problem with seeing Aidan O'Connell out there. I'm not saying that means that the Raiders are going to go win 9, 10, 12 games or he's the next coming to Jim Plunkett. I'm not saying that at all. But at one point, I was very skeptical of who Aidan O'Connell was and what he was going to bring to the table. Now I feel very comfortable that, hey, this guy's going to continue to grow and has a chance to be a really good quarterback. And the funny thing about Aidan O'Connell, it's funny he was drafted in the 4th round as well. I remember when Dak Prescott was drafted by the Cowboys. All right, he was a 4th-round compensatory pick. They wanted Paxton Lynch. They didn't get him. They wanted who was the guy that the Raiders got out of Michigan State? Anyway, I forget his name. That shows you how good he was. But anyway, they grabbed him. I forget the quarterback's name. The Raiders grabbed him before the Cowboys had a chance to get him. And then all of a sudden the Cowboys were like, well, all right, we'll get this guy Dak Prescott. And Dak looked pretty good in preseason, and I remember being at ESPN Central Texas doing the radio show every day talking about the Cowboys. It's like, yeah, it's just a preseason game. It's not a big deal. You can't take anything from a preseason game. Oh, I don't know, Q. Dak's looking pretty good. And I was like, no, I don't think he's going to be that guy. And then Tony Romo got hurt. And it's crazy because the similarities are so large. Like Tony Romo was a guy later in his career that was always getting injured, right? And so you always knew that there was a chance anytime Tony Romo was going to be out on the grass that he could end up getting injured and they were going to have their backup quarterback come in. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo is the same guy. He's had a history of being injured, and we all know, we've gone over it and talked about it so much on the show, on the radio. I mean, it's documented everywhere that Jimmy's been injured quite a bit. So you need someone that you feel comfortable with that can go in there and take over if need be, if he goes down. And right now, I would have no problem with Aidan O'Connell, who is a 4th-round pick, just like Dak was a 4th-round pick. So, it's crazy. Tony Romo gets injured in, a practice? Or no, the preseason game. He gets injured in the preseason game. He hurts his back. And then their backup quarterback there in Dallas, actually Kellen Moore, broke his leg in training camp. So now it's like, all right, 3rd-string guy, you're up. Well, it's kind of similar to what the situation is with Aidan O'Connell, right? He wasn't the 1st-string guy coming into camp because he was a rookie. He was behind Brian Hoyer, who was the number 2 guy, who's behind Jimmy G, right? Obviously, that's the pecking order. Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, Aidan O'Connell. I could see a situation where he leapfrogs Brian Hoyer and is the number 2 guy. Again, I'm not putting him into the starting lineup. Hopefully, he doesn't have to go in at all this year. Hopefully, Jimmy G is healthy the whole year, and they're able to build off of what they've been doing in training camp, and they're able to go out there and execute at a very high level. But worst case scenario, in case of emergency break glass, I feel like if the Raiders had to break glass and throw Aidan O'Connell out there, they would have confidence to do that if need be. Again, they don't want to, but he's, I feel, proven enough that the moment's not too big for him. He's not going to, panic in the pocket, right? He's not going to get happy feet. He's not going to just, try to throw the ball away at the first sign of, the one guy being covered. He'll go through his progressions. Like, everything he's doing looks like he's been there, done that. He looks like he's a veteran. And maybe it's because all the years that he was there at Purdue, he wasn't one of those guys that was just there a couple years and then got out. I mean, he was there for a long time. Maybe it's because he's got it between the ears where he's able to pick up the offense and understand what Josh McDaniels is trying to coach. I don't know what it is that has him separate himself like it is, but right now I don't think it's even close. He's been the best rookie quarterback in the league in preseason so far. And again, you can't take too much stock in it, but it says something that he's been able to go out there and play at a very high level. So again, I think that the Raiders are very comfortable with Aidan O'Connell, and I know I would be very comfortable if the Raiders decided to name him the number 2 guy. I don't know if that means that Brian Hoyer ends up getting released. I don't think so, only because I really do think that he's important for the development of Aidan O'Connell, but I could see Brian Hoyer not being active on game days and have Aidan O'Connell sitting there as the backup. I could totally see that. Again, we'll see on the 29th who makes the roster and who doesn't. I think Hoyer is important for the development, so Jimmy G could focus on just getting up to speed with the first-team offense and getting on the same page with everybody and going out and doing his job and not have to worry about trying to help coach up a rookie. That could be Brian Hoyer's job, but I could definitely see him not active on game day. So Aidan O'Connell, 2 games up, 2 games with thumbs up. He's been doing really well. Interested to see how he finishes this next week of practice and then the game against the Cowboys. And it'll probably tell us a lot about the Raiders and the feelings of O'Connell on how much he plays against the Cowboys in preseason game number 3, the final preseason game of the preseason. So, and then everything will happen getting ready for Denver first week of the regular season. So that's all I got on Aidan O'Connell. I know there's a lot of folks that's got some feedback on Aidan O'Connell. We got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts on O'Connell and a lot more will come up after I tell you about FanDuel. And with football season about to kick off, FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, when you bet on Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. All you got to do is pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every single victory. And you could use those bonus bets on anything: spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Have a feeling there's going to be plenty of calls and texts about one Aidan O'Connell, who we talked about in segment number 2. But let's go ahead and get things started with Dave B in the 757. He's actually calling to talk about Zamir White, his usage, and what he thinks that means for the Raiders' ability to sign Josh Jacobs. Here he is, Dave B in the 757.
Hey, Q. Dave B in the 757. Hey, not calling in to overreact on another stellar performance in the preseason, because that's exactly what it is, the preseason. But I did want to bring up an interesting tidbit that I've noticed, and this is relative to our ability to sign Josh Jacobs. I don't think there's any way in heck that we aren't going to re-sign JJ based on the usage in these first 2 games from Zamir White. There's no way that we're going to run him like we have these first 2 preseason games and not have the intention of re-signing Jacobs. There's just no way. We're not going to use a guy who's probably going to start this much through these first 2 games. Just want to hear your thoughts, perspective on that. Keep up the great work. Raiders.
Dave B., thanks for the call. Appreciate you. 23 carries, 83 yards through 2 games. I don't think that that's that much action. I mean, remember, Josh Jacobs played in the Hall of Fame game last season, but that was like the last game that he played in. But I don't think 23 carries is too much. I don't think that that means that, they're going to use him a lot and then all of a sudden they got to bring in Josh Jacobs. I think that they're actually using those carries. I think Zamir White needed those carries, right? I mean, I feel like he improved from the first game against the 49ers where he looked like he was running, I don't want to say soft, but he wasn't running downhill hard behind his pads and trying to finish off blocks or finish off runs. I think he did that better against the Rams. I still think he needs a little bit more work. Still think there was a couple times that he went down pretty easy. He's got to finish those runs, especially when he has good blocks. But, I mean, still 40 yards rushing on 10 carries, average 4 yards a carry. I thought he did a really good job. And honestly, when it comes to Josh Jacobs, I don't have any doubt that he's going to be there week 1. I think that it would be important if the Raiders could get him in, a week before the regular season, or just get him some kind of, action, even if it's just in training camp amongst the team where he's getting hit a little bit. Just kind of get him acclimated to getting hit and getting ready. I mean, every guy can go out there and prepare and be in shape, and I know he is, but you would like to see him just get hit a little bit. I'd love to see him come in this week and maybe even get a couple runs against the Cowboys. I feel like that's not going to happen, and I feel like that the Raiders wouldn't put him out there in the 3rd preseason game against the Cowboys, but that I think would be an ideal situation if they could get him in this week, and then he just has like 2 or 3 carries just to get hit, just to feel it again in preparation for the upcoming season. But, I have no doubt that Josh Jacobs will be there, and him and Zamir White could be a nice 1-2 punch as far as I'm concerned. So thank you so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Big O Raider from the 559. So what up, Q? Big O Raider here from the 559. Quick text. If Aidan O'Connell 4 doesn't get the backup spot, I'm going to be pissed. The kid looks comfortable and poised in the pocket and seems to be picking up the playbook very well. Thanks for everything you do, Q. Shout out to my brothers Joey, Mike, and Gus. Let's go Raiders. That's from Big O Raider in the 559. And thank you so much for that text. And, yeah, that's what I was talking about in segment number 2, man. He just looks like you said, he has that comfortable, poise feeling. He's rocking that Raiders motto, pride and poise. He's doing that in the pocket. He looks very comfortable, and you're right when it comes to the playbook and also just the ball placement. There was a couple passes he had on Saturday. One to Keelan Cole where he could have led Keelan right into a defender to hit him, get him a big hit. Instead, he kind of threw it a little bit behind him just to make him throttle down. He threw that one outside to Trey Tucker where only Trey Tucker was going to catch it. That ball to Cam Sims he threw. That one to Christian Wilkerson he threw. I mean, just really good passes and put him in places where it was either going to be his guy or nobody get the ball. I'm pretty impressed from Aidan O'Connell. And again, a couple weeks ago, if you had told me that's how I was going to feel, I would have probably told you you're crazy. But here we are. And that's why we watch the games and don't just base it off of everything that we think we know, because a lot of times we think we know and we really don't. And I have no problem saying I just didn't know when it came to Aidan O'Connell. Up next, Grim Raider from Virginia. He's calling to talk about what he's looking forward to after 2 preseason games with the Raiders. Here he is, Grim Raider out of Virginia.
Hey there, Q. It's me, Grim Raider from VA. I just want to say, after watching 2 preseasons with, I know it's all preseason, but for real, something I'm really looking forward to is watching more of this guy right here, the quarterback rookie, Aidan O'Connell. I wasn't so sure what to think of him, but after watching him play, being all cool, calm, and collective, and seems like he's been doing it for a really long time. There's some few things that I'm sure he'll, work on and get better, but his accuracy, his deep ball accuracy, even running for a first down, all of that is what he's got me doing right now. Is looking forward seeing him, more of him out there, and especially in the regular season eventually. I just feel like it's only a matter of time. I'm looking forward to it, which is really cool. Anyway, Q, keep up what you're doing. One love, one nation, Raider Nation. Just win, baby.
There he is, Grim Raider. Thanks for the call. And yeah, Aidan O'Connell is what you're looking forward to. That is so funny. Again, I said it in the postgame show. Me and Eddie Pascal from the Raiders were doing the postgame show, and I kept saying, if I had told you, Eddie, that Aidan O'Connell was going to be the guy that I keep wanting to see more of, you would have thought that I was crazy, or you would have thought that I was lying to you, or I was trying to gas you up. And he's like, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, but this is what happens in the preseason. Guys start to make a name for themselves. Now, the thing is, does it translate to the regular season? Well, we don't know, right? And honestly, I hope that we don't find out about Aidan O'Connell in the regular season this year. I really do. I hope Jimmy G plays every single game. I hope he plays all 17, and I hope the Raiders earn some playoff time, right? I mean, just that would be ideal scenario number one. Everything else, who knows? But I mean, if he were to have to go in, like I said in segment number 2, I feel very comfortable with him under center. So, Grim Raider, thanks for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Andrew the Raider. It says, "Hey Q, it's Andrew out of the 812. Just watched the highlights from the game since I missed it being at a concert Saturday night. And man, Aidan is looking to be a freaking gem. Like what I'm seeing. Defense is looking good too. Raiders." That's from Andrew the Raider. And we talked a lot about Aidan O'Connell. So let's talk about the defense. They're looking like the defense that I've been seeing the last, couple weeks of training camp and what we saw against the 49ers. And it wasn't as dominant, I thought, against the Rams as it was against the 49ers, but it was still good. And they're still – the other thing about the defense, this is funny that I say this, is whenever on Saturday Stetson Bennett or any other Ram quarterback dropped back to pass, in my mind I immediately thought that one of the Raiders was going to make a play on the ball. I just immediately thought, okay, great, the ball's in the air. There's going to be a play made on it. I don't know why. They've all of a sudden got me. It's kind of like they've taught me. They've coached me up to think that they're going to make a play on the ball every time it's in the air. And I haven't felt that way about the Raiders defense in a very long time. But it's just something about their mentality now. I expect to see plays. So when, Palomar comes down with the interception and takes it to the house, that was expected. When Amik Robertson gets his hand on the ball a couple times, even though he didn't come up with the interception, that's expected. Like every time I saw that ball in the air, I thought somebody was about to break through and make a play on it. It's pretty crazy that just that quickly things could change for the Raiders defense because we know it has been the Achilles heel of this team for a very long time. Got time for a couple more quick texts and call. This call's from Proto from the 778. He's calling to speak on Aidan O'Connell, and he's almost at a loss for words. It's pretty funny. Here he goes, Proto from the 778.
Hey, yo, Q, it's your boy Proto from the 778. I'm going to make this nice and short. Aidan O'Connell is a good football player. Like, damn, he really is. Like, I've been trying not to say anything because I'm just, like, kind of waiting to see him, like, flop. But, shoot, dude, this kid is good, man. I just, obviously, I'm calling you while the game is happening right now because this kid is good. He's actually just good. I don't even know what else to say. Maybe it's all going to fall apart. Maybe it will. I don't know. But right now, based on what I'm seeing, this kid is good. That's all I got, man. Peace.
Short and sweet and to the point, Proto. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, you said it best. He's a good football player. He has a potential to be a really good football player. He's looking good. He's looking comfortable, and that's all you can really say about the young man. And just the fact that you were kind of at a loss for words kind of cracks me up, right? I mean, it's one of those situations where it's like you don't even know what to say about the young man. That's what he's doing to you, and hopefully this is who this guy is going to be for the long term. We'll see, but right now throughout the preseason with all the rookie quarterbacks, out of all of them. Out of Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, like all the quarterbacks that were out there that we all talked about in great length here on the show, Aidan O'Connell has shocked and surprised or stood outplayed all of those guys. So, Proto, thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. Got a text from Raider Matt out of Orange County. Said, "What's up, Q? It's Raider Matt from Orange County. Was at the game tonight, and sneaky good free agent signing has to be Philip Dorsett. That man looked good tonight, was cooking the Rams DBs. Also, Aidan O'Connell is him. Kid's cold as ice. Last thing, Zeus ran hard tonight. We styling." That's Raider Matt from Orange County. He was in attendance, and thanks, Matt, for that text. I appreciate you. And, yeah, Philip Dorsett played well. I mean, there's tough decisions in that wide receiver room. I don't know who's going to stay and who's going to go, right? I mean, when DJ Turner was released, and, of course, he had that injury. He got that injury settlement and was released. That, to me, was a no-brainer. But everyone else, like I mentioned before that I thought Trey Tucker and DeAndre Carter was in a battle for a spot. I think DeAndre Carter showed on Saturday night how good he could be and what he could bring to the table, not only in the kick return game, but also just as a wide receiver, getting the ball in his hands and using that speed. So now I'm like, okay, he's got to stay on the team. Trey Tucker's on the team. Hunter Renfro's on the team. Devontae Adams is definitely on the team. Jacoby Myers is on the team. Okay, that's already 5, right? So where do you go from there? Cam Sims, Christian Wilkerson, right? Keelan Cole. I mean, where are you going? I mean, who's staying and who's not? I mean, you can't keep everybody. but it's definitely Philip Dorsett. I mean, there's a lot of competition now in that wide receiver room. So, again, I'm glad Dave Ziegler's got that job and not me. Thanks for the text. So I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from Tim from Central Oregon. He's calling to talk about the mic'd up session that he saw involving Max Crosby. Here he is, Tim from Central Oregon.
Hey, Q. How's it going, man? This is Tim from Central Point, Oregon. I just watched a almost 4-minute mic'd up segment from YouTube with Max Crosby. It's called I'm Playing at a Different Speed. I encourage all our Raider brothers and sisters to take a look at it. Max Crosby, he's going to be huge this year, and it features him with the joint practice with the Rams. And this guy is the only guy that they show, at least in this clip, that's fired up on every single anything that's going on the field. He's telling guys to hustle up. He's got 100 plus on the energy mode there. It's just, this is going to be his year. He's going to raise up to at least top 5 in the top 100 next season. So just a shout out to Mad Max, and let's go Raiders. Raiders.
Tim, thank you for the call, my man. And yeah, Max is, well, obviously a great player, but he's entertaining as hell. And he told us in a media session that he's trying to get mic'd up every game. He wants to be mic'd up every game. He's understanding the entertainment value side of this as well. I mean, the dude's a smart guy, right? He realizes that he's the face of the Raiders. He realizes that he's a hell of a defensive player. He's a character. There's a lot to like about Max Crosby, but more importantly, kind of what I said on Friday's show here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, he's the guy that's the leader of raising the standard for the silver and black, changing the culture for the silver and black. And I'll tell you, you can't change the culture overnight. You can't change it in one training camp or one preseason. You can't do that. It's impossible. But over time, you could definitely get that culture changed from what it was to what it could be. And I do believe that there is a big-time effort from the Raiders, their coaching staff, their front office, everyone, to change this team, change the culture, change the standard, raise the bar and everything, and just go play at a high level and operate at a high level as an organization. And that's what the goal's got to be. And Max Crosby is right there as the leader trying to do all of that. So, Tim, thanks so much for that. And, yeah, I do encourage anyone who hasn't seen that mic'd up session with Max Crosby, you definitely want to go check it out. It's very, very entertaining. But that's going to do it for today's show. Definitely appreciate all the feedback. We'll get more calls and texts coming up tomorrow. We'll have more news and notes as well, and plenty of conversation as well. The Raiders are on to preseason game week number 3, the Dallas Cowboys, coming up on Saturday. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.